All right, peace and blessings, assalamu alaikum, shalom, welcome everyone. We are back, we are live. And our topic today, I'm gonna try to pronounce it the right way, Symbionese Liberation Army, a cautionary tale of radicalism. Peace and blessings, Doc, how you doing today?
I'm good, brother.
All right. So this Symbionese Liberation Army, a really wild group that I come to realize, a black head, but the majority of the members were white.
Seemed cute. Brother took his name from the Amistad Rebellion. Yeah. Rather than escape prison. Yeah.
And so this group, now they were different from the rest of the Black Power groups in that era, correct?
Well, they're not a black group. That's the, they got a black head, but they're right in line with the Weathermen, in line with SDS, the Students for a Democratic Society. These very, very radical, wild, have no boundary white groups. So they're operating out of that tradition, but at the exact same time, you have to remember that the Black Liberation Army is doing many of the things that you're going to see the SLA do, which as far as robbing banks, kidnapping people, it's what leads to the hunting down of Assata Shakur, the incarceration of Mutulu Shakur, and other members of the Black Liberation Army. So this is sort of the aftershock, the aftershock of 60s radicalism. These are the holdovers. These are the true believers. While other people broke away and went and got corporate jobs, these guys stayed down. They stayed radical, and they're aiming for the overthrow of America by any means necessary.
Now, I normally, especially before the program, I would get the Black Liberation Army confused with the SBLA, because I honestly thought that the Black Liberation Army was the one who, did the kidnapping and all of that of Patty Hearst and robbing the bank. So break the two down.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about the Symbionese Liberation Army, this is a bunch of wild, radical white cats who have these very interesting ideas of overthrowing the government, and they're going to fight America. You've heard this great saying that we'll fight them until hell freezes over, and then we'll fight them on ice. That's the SLA. They're not going to stop. There's nothing that you could give them. Not no money. They don't need money. They already have money. They don't want money. What they want is they want justice and equality in this nation. When you're looking at a group like the Black Liberation Army, although they are robbing banks, they're robbing drug dealers and things like that, and oftentimes taking people hostage, kidnapping people, so to speak. It was aimed at the idea of liberating Black America. The Symbionese Liberation Army was trying to liberate the entire nation, and when you look at, like, take for granted the abduction of Patty Hearst. What do they want for Patty Hearst? They want for the Hearst family to create these food centers so that the masses of people could be fed. And it vacillates. I think initially they asked for about 4 to 5 million. And they grew their request all the way to 400 million. If you got 4 million, you got 400 million. So they're really trying to redistribute wealth in America. And that's, to be honest with you, something that is kind of taboo to even talk about. It's one of the reasons why we don't talk about the radicalized Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's one of the smear campaigns that they utilized against Obama. And it's, to be honest with you, one of the more befuddling and bewildering things that we're seeing to this day, that America has convinced so many of its citizens that a redistribution of wealth, a raising of the minimum wage, the lowering of taxes on the poor, working class, and middle class are an anathema to American principles. They've in many ways, you could argue that ironically, they're experiencing exactly what F. Lee Bailey said that Patty Hearst was experiencing, Stockholm syndrome. And yeah, that F. Lee Bailey that represented Patty Hearst in her trial, that's the O.J. Simpson lawyer. The same F. Lee Bailey.
Wow. So let me ask you real quick. Did that work? Did it get her off?
You know what? I don't know if it worked or not. I don't know. I don't know if Patty Hearst ultimately ended up going to jail or, yeah, right here. I just clicked on something that said, yeah, she got 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but Jimmy Carter commuted her sentence, and she only did 2. But yeah, she went to prison. Wow. Yeah, this is a moment that let's be honest. America is tired. You know, America. You know, we came out of World War II, 1945. We go immediately into the Cold War. 9 years after that, and keep in mind, we don't even have to go 9 years. We can go the year after that with Charles Hamilton Houston representing Heman Sweat, leading the attack in the courts against Jim Crow and racial segregation, racial inequality, discrimination, what have you. That's going to last from 46 all the way up until arguably LBJ signs the Voting Rights Act in 65. So that's like 20 years of activism. And on the heels of that, you have identity politics. So you're looking at women's rights, you're looking at feminism, you're looking at womanism, you're looking at Black Power, the Chicano movement, all these, that's another decade. And then here you have the SLA and the Black Liberation Army and all these truly radical cats, you know, and many of the people have fallen away from the movement, but the movement kept going on. And those who fell away from the movement, many of them are going to ultimately end up being that first generation that becomes addicted to cocaine. Whereas white folk are doing cocaine, they partying, disco, and what have you. They're trying to drown out 60s radicalism. And while they're doing that, of course, Black America, we had a heroin epidemic that occurred within our community, which was in many ways the perfect storm, because while as heroin comes in, this thing called GRIDS, gay-related immune deficiency syndrome, appears. We call it AIDS now, you know, and Black folk were using IV drugs. So, you know, and the one of the shames of the nation is that we didn't attack GRIDS seriously, because many on the Christian right said that it was God's judgment against gay folk.
Wow. Let's look at this short little video, little introduction video to the Army. Let's see.
Jackpot. But who were they? The organization was a very valuable symbolic asset. The SLA had just hit the jackpot. But who were they? The organization was the result of a prisoner outreach program in the early 70s, led by Black inmates who worked closely with white activists. Their figurehead was Donald DeFreeze, a dedicated criminal and quasi-Marxist philosopher who'd escaped from prison in 1973. It was in the prisoner outreach project that he met Willie Wolfe, the white guy that Patty had said was short and stout, a man whose upper middle-class life was much closer to Patty's existence than DeFreeze's. The FBI's wanted poster remarked that DeFreeze was to be considered armed and extremely dangerous. It was clearly the only part of the group with street cred. It was during this time in hiding that he met up with Patricia Mizmoun Sotishik, another co-founder of the SLA, and they teamed up with Nancy Ling Perry and Camilla Christine Hall. This was a ragtag bunch of posh activists, not exactly the kind of people who would usually elicit fear. Before Nancy Perry got involved, she'd been a middle-class astrology-loving, weed-smoking street hustler who occasionally dealt blackjack in San Francisco's North Beach dives. She was a very valuable, symbolic asset.
Right. So that's a little background real quick. Would you agree with everything that he said, Doc?
Yeah. That's a nice introduction. One of the, talking about the idea of the freeze and the idea that the roots of the SLA are born out of the relationship between Black inmates and these bleeding heart white liberals, these white radicals. That's nothing new. You have to remember that Eldridge Cleaver, Minister of Information for the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, was released early as a result of his relationship with white radicals. They arranged for Cleaver to be released, arranged for him to get a job at Ramparts. So that's one of the things that, to be honest with you, is frightening for the government, for any FBI, CIA, whoever you want to name. And the reason that it's frightening, and it actually turns into a sort of a battle back and forth between Black activists and the government. The government operates, and when I say the government, I mean the FBI, the CIA, state and local law enforcement agencies. They've always operated from the position that Black folk were too stupid to know that they were oppressed, and definitely not smart enough to figure out how to solve their oppression. It would take white folk to do that. And when you see these white radicals dealing with black folk, Black inmates, Black, they believe that they're going to, in many ways, teach them and feed them and direct them towards how you get free. And if it's without that connection, Black folk would never be a threat. And you see that type of thinking, especially when you read some of the writings and the thoughts of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. They're afraid that, to use the term that they use for Muslims, radicalized. They think that these white folk will be able to educate and teach Black folk, and in many ways radicalize them, as if their personal suffering isn't enough to guide them towards, number one, recognizing their status as being chained to the lowest rung of America's socioeconomic ladder, but also their daily suffering that they go through. We ain't even smart enough to recognize that we're struggling. And that's the thinking. So when you get white radicals involved in that, they're thinking, oh, this is the beginning of the end right here, because now they're going to point out to us that we're actually being oppressed.
Doc, all of our programs we had in August, we've been, this common type of government keeps coming up, Marxist-Leninist, consistently coming up. Why is that the go-to? Why is Marxist-Leninist the go-to? What the fuck? I mean, God damn.
It's for a lot of reasons, but I'll give you a few. One of them is quite simply that it's an oppositional, almost boogeyman type of political and economic ideology that you'll find people who turn to Islam. They turn to, especially Islam, within the Black community. And a big part of that is not an acceptance of the tenets of Islam. It's a repudiation of Christianity. People are attempting to repudiate the inequality that naturally comes from capitalism by saying they're Marxist, by saying they're Leninist, by saying that they're socialist. They don't really know anything about those things, but they just know, and they'll use it as a way of talking about a general angst, disagreement with the existing social hierarchy, class structure of America. One of the more interesting things, if you read Karl Marx has this brilliant quote, because Marx is talking about things that, I'm not going to say that he's talking about economics, but he's not solely focused upon economics. But Marx has this great quote that he says, "If I know nothing else, I know that I am not a Marxist," meaning that everything that they have built upon his initial ideas, he never said any of those things. That was never his position. And that's why how you end up with Marxists, you end up with Leninists, you Maoists, you end up with all of these very radical ideological perspectives. And most people have no idea what they're talking about when they're talking about those two, those two different things. They're talking in many ways like just about symbols and things like this. They might as well say, "I'm anti-capitalism, period," instead of trying to jazz it up and talk about, well, if you look at Marxism, you look at the class argument, and you look at, yeah, okay. One of the things that you'll find is that people who are truly Marxist, Leninist, whatever they are, they've studied that for decades to get an understanding of it. And you have to remember that they're talking about Russian and European politics, which is not directly applicable to what we have going on in this nation right here. Do we have racial inequality, economic inequality? We certainly do. But how do you transfer those dialectics from Russia and apply them to America? And most people are incapable of doing that.
And Marx was Ashkenazi Jew, right?
You know what? I believe so.
And then Lenin from Russia, right?
Yes.
Now, Lenin, am I correct that at that time there was no black people in Russia?
No, I don't think you can point to any moment where there ain't been no black folk nowhere. Black folk have always been everywhere that you could imagine.
So did Lenin treat black people any different than other white people treated black people?
I would argue that Lenin treated them like he treated everybody else. And that's very perilously, you're not talking about, you're talking about an iron-willed dictatorship. These are not necessarily individuals who are understanding of what leadership is and democracy and the sharing of power. That doesn't necessarily fit with what it is that they're talking about. When you're talking about a group like the Communist Party USA in particular, Communist Party USA, they're talking about creating a workers' paradise. Yet at the exact same time that we're talking about the creation of a workers' paradise, you're also talking about, and let's be very, very, very clear about this. You're not talking about this just because you're focused on the class argument. In this nation, that doesn't mean the racial argument goes anywhere. If you go back and you look at Richard Wright's Native Son, Richard Wright he does a lot of things in Native Son, but as a result of and I can point you directly to the portion of the book that got him kicked out of the Communist Party. It's the trial of Bigger Thomas. Bigger Thomas has been accused of killing a white girl, Mary Dalton, and it's actually a very, very, very dope book. One of the best books ever written. However, He's on trial. And now this is a poor, uneducated South Side of Chicago Black boy. They're getting ready to kill him. It's just what it is. She was an heiress, and he was their driver, and she comes up dead. Well, if you're on trial for your life, and you know that they're going to try and kill you, what would you want your lawyer to mount a defense about you, and about how Bigger's attorney doesn't do that. Bigger's attorney gets up there and starts espousing the virtues of communism and how it's American capitalism that caused the death of Mary Dalton and economic inequality and what have you. What Wright was saying, because they put him out, and Wright writes this essay titled, "I Tried to Be a Communist." And basically what he says is that, I don't care if you're talking about capitalism, socialism, Leninism, Marxism, white folk is white folk. And even when your neck is on the line, they're more interested in advancing their political ideology than they are in even mounting a decent defense to get your neck off of the chopping block. So you have all of these different things that are going on with the radical left. On the one hand, the radical left is talking about overthrowing the government. Yet at the exact same time, one has to wonder, have they gotten over their racial addiction, their addiction to whiteness? If you go back, and this is sort of the same time, it's a little bit before them. No, actually the same time. Charles Manson's Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter was about causing a race war between Black people and white people. And Manson was convinced that because Black folk are physically superior, that they would win. However, Black folk would never be able to get their minds together to be able to solve their problems. And he planned on being the last white man standing who would be elected to guide Black folk forward. And that's what Helter Skelter is about. And so in many ways, it's tying into the same white mentality that we saw with Hoover and all these other individuals who are saying that Black folk are not smart enough to understand what it is they're facing and how to solve their problems.
Wow. And so this, the SLA and the white folks got together through a prison exchange. Am I understand? Not a prisoner exchange, but
the Symbionese Liberation Army was birthed out of a relationship between these bleeding heart white liberals and these Black inmates, and that they're you have to really think like right now. We talked about this, that I love my dogs. Okay, 2 German Shepherds, love them. And I found myself looking at some of those. You've seen those like YouTube or Facebook videos of dogs at the shelter, and how, somebody need to come and get him because he got 72 hours for the. Okay, I find myself being very moved by that. Very, it gets me going. It's similar sympathy for the downtrodden and those who have been abused by American society that motivates white liberals, especially the radical white left. And many of them can get themselves worked up to the point where they're kind of saying that life ain't worth living if we gotta have some inequality. And I don't want to benefit from other people's suffering and things like that. So that's how you're looking at these white liberals interacting, these white radicals interacting with these Black inmates. They're trying to save them. And what I don't think that they ever really understand, and it's one of the lines that Avon Barksdale said in The Wire. He says, "Look here, baby, you got to realize that there's game inside and there's game outside. You just got to get in the game." And so one could make a very significant argument that Black inmates are in many ways running a game on these white radicals. And the goal for them is often not liberating Black America or liberating the world or ending economic inequality. The goal is the same goal that you see with Ghislaine Maxwell. The goal is to get out of prison. How do I get out of prison? And you're seeing a lot of people be able to work those angles and literally get out of prison. Eldridge Cleaver was able to get out of prison strictly due to his relationship with these white radicals, wealthy, well-connected white radicals.
So the 70s, when they came into, I guess, being, what was different between the 70s
Who's that?
The Lebanese Army?
Okay.
When they came into existence, compared that with the 60s, where you had Martin, Malcolm, you had Stokely. Why didn't these people go towards them instead of old boy from the jail? Why didn't those type of white folks really go to it? Because to me, Brando, even though he gave the Panthers money, Brando ain't gonna rob no bank. Brando ain't gonna give you no money or no guns to go kill up nobody with. But these white folks were different.
Yeah, because they haven't lived in the real world. They don't understand that there is a level of trouble that you can get yourself into that nobody that you know can get you out of. They've had the privilege of being able to always have some escape routes. I went to Ohio State with a guy by the name of, I'm not going to even say his name. If he hears this, he'll know that I'm talking about him. But we were hanging out on a Friday or Saturday. We all, everybody just hanging, we went to a restaurant, what have you, and he doesn't eat at the restaurant. And I'm like, yo, dude, I gave him like $20. I said, man, go get yourself something to eat, man. You look kind of strange just sitting here, not eating, everybody else eating, because he ran in, oh man, I'm just a poor old nigga. Okay. Well, turns out his daddy ran a insurance office. He was an insurance man. He wasn't hurting for money. He lived out in the suburbs. He lived in Reynoldsburg and what have you. And the next day he called me and he asked me if I would give him a ride to this record store. So I'm like, yeah, cool. I'll give you a ride to the record store. I'll understand how you need to go to a record store if you didn't even have money to eat last night. He says this to me. It's one of the most offensive things that one could ever hear from somebody that you just looked out for. He said, oh man, I ain't got no money for that. I ain't got no money to be spending on no food. Okay. And I said to him, see, the difference between you and me is that when I say that I don't have it, I don't have it. Meaning there's nobody I can even call in my family that can give it to me. I'm broke. You playing broke. And in many ways, that's what you're seeing by these upper middle class white folk. They're kind of slumming, to be honest with you. And I think that there's an element of their existence where they really don't understand that shit can get real. So you have that population. I mean, and I say that to sort of make my way towards John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. John Brown asked Frederick Douglass to go with him. And Douglass was like, oh no. Douglass said, do you know you're going into a perfect steel trap? That there will be no escape from Harper's Ferry for y'all? Black folk, especially if you're talking about a Stokely Carmichael, if you're talking about a Huey P. Newton, I would argue even an Eldridge Cleaver, they ain't crazy. So they're not going to sign up right away to go, and blow something up, to go in, because they know what pain and what trouble is going to come to them personally as a result of doing that. These privileged white folk, there's a reason why they're able to go down into the hood and to work all day, or go to some prison and mentor, because they ain't got no damn jobs, because all their bills are already paid. So why won't they go to a Stokely? Why won't they go to the Panthers or what have you? What they're trying to do is something that I would argue even the Panthers are not willing to do, which is pick up arms and have a direct head-on violent conflict with the United States government. You got to be a bad hombre to do that, because you're either going to die or you're going to prison forever. Those are your two options.
Wow. Now, Doc, when we're looking at Black nationalism, and we discussed the Marxists and the Leninists, how does Black nationalism fit on that scale with Marxists and Leninists? I would think that Black nationalism wouldn't be on the same scale, that their ideas are not compatible.
No, I mean, you have to look at Marxism, socialism, communism as a tool, the same way capitalism is a tool. You have Black nationalists who are capitalists. You have Black nationalists who are socialists, Black nationalists who are communists. It's not the political ideology that is driving Black nationalism. What it is and to borrow Khaled's beautiful quote, people who are interested in the liberation and salvation of the Black nation. So in every way, what you're seeing is people adopting these different tools, like the idea of a worker's paradise. Well, yeah, a worker's paradise would be nice because it means that Black workers would be uplifted. At the same time that you can say that, you could say, well, socialism would be great because there wouldn't be any poverty. Capitalism could be great because it would allow Black folk to get in the game and to amass millions of dollars. So it's not the ideology of Black nationalism. And when you think back to Malcolm's brilliant definition of what Black nationalism actually is, it is merely a call for Black folk to control the politics, the politicians, the economics, the schools, the curriculum within their community. You can do that within any political philosophy that you want to.
Interesting. So now, how did the rest of the Black revolutionary world, so to speak, how did they see the Symbionese Liberation Army? Did they welcome them in as part of the group?
Well, you have to think that you're talking about 75, 74, 75. They're gone already.
Oh, wow.
They're gone. The Panthers have largely been disbanded. You got to think the Panthers were created on October 15, 1966. They're largely defunct now by this time. So there isn't a structure there for Black power. Just as we can say that white folk walked away from the idea of Black power, of being a radical, a hippie and free love and all that, and migrated themselves into mainstream, quote unquote, legitimate American economy and American institutions. The same can be said for Black folk. Black folk have, by and large, moved from the political edge of Black power and begun extenuating what could only be called the cultural manifestations of Black power, the Afro, the say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. But by 1976, yeah, you hard pressed to really come up with a single significant voice dealing with Black folk. You know, Fred Hampton's dead, Malcolm's dead. You know, SNCC has been taken apart. Assata Shakur is on the run by this time. Mutulu them are getting ready to go to prison. So there is no existing Black power structure there by that time. You have some people who still believe, but by and large, now it's nothing to really dock up to if you're the Symbionese Liberation Army. But I could imagine that many of them would get a hell of a kick out of hearing this brother's name and what he's trying to do. But nobody with good sense, I would say this, nobody with good sense in the radical community would be rushing to form an alliance with the SLA. Because after you lived through what happened at the hand of federal, local, and state law enforcement agencies, you don't want to get yourself in front of that train, because that train is going to destroy everything that's in its path. They've proven that they're willing to do it, and they will do it. And what really problematizes it even more is who's president during the creation of the SLA, and that's Richard Milhouse Nixon. And Nixon was elected on a political slogan of law and order, that no one is above the law, no one is below the law, and let's enforce the law. And that's in many ways his way of saying, listen, we're coming for them. We are coming for these radicals, these dissidents. We're getting ready to wipe them off. So now there ain't much left for you to dock up with. You know, Black power has been destroyed by 75, 76. Wow. And the next major political statement, ironically, that Black folk are going to have is Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, The Message. You have the birth of hip hop during this time.
Wow. So their first major move was the assassination of Marcus Foster, November 1973. Says the SLA first gained public attention with the assassination of Marcus Foster, the first African-American superintendent of Oakland Public Schools. They claimed to have killed him for his supposed support of a student identification card system, which they saw as a tool of a fascist state. The act was widely condemned. Why would an ID card, first, before we even get to that, what is fascism?
Radical, unending totalitarian oppression of people.
Totalitarian oppression of people?
Yeah. Complete domination. Fascist. You're talking about Adolf Hitler level of oppression.
Wow. So how in the world could an ID card is for giving children ID cards something fascist to get you assassinated?
You have to put yourself in the mindset of people who believe in conspiracy theories. Okay. Put yourself there where there's no, where the end is already recognized. And now what we have to do is create an argument that explains the end. Okay. So if you've seen the Nazi regime utilize ID cards, you saw them utilize the Star of David so that Jews were easily identifiable and what have you. It's not a big leap in the minds of conspiracy theorists. And this is, of course, devoid of any real evidence. It's not a big leap to say, well, that's the first step toward fascism. That's the first step towards oppression. By forcing people to have ID cards to even get an education. It's going to start there. And then they're going to say, well, if you don't have this ID card, you can't go to school anymore. You can't get an education. You can't X, Y, and Z. It's a slippery slope that it's a poor reading of history and a awesome lack of logic. You're making all of these connections to things that are don't really have any connection. It's kind of like, probably the best example that I can use is, I listened to this brother talk about this great, it's a famous quote that is found in an FBI memorandum. I'm not sure if Hoover wrote it or one of his underlings wrote it. But it says that, and it's part of the counterintelligence program, it says that part of the goal of the counterintelligence program is to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah that could unify all Black folk behind basically a radical political ideology. This was written probably in 65, 66, 67. Listen to this brother talk about this. And he said, therein is definitive proof that the US government had something to do with the murder of Tupac Amaru Shakur. And the frightening thing about it was that I read the comments. I always read the comments of people. And, and there's several hundred comments of people who agree with it. Either didn't care or were totally unaware that had been written 2-3 decades before Pac was killed. But they utilized it, they weaved it into a conspiracy of why Tupac was killed. So you're talking about an absence of logic. Whereas, so they have to go ahead and they're going to use ID cards. Is ID cards first? The next thing that they're going to do is boom, 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 boom. Now, what evidence do you have? That's got none. But it stokes these people's fire. And when you have people who are some semblance of crazy, it doesn't take much. The power of suggestion doesn't take much at all. One of the scariest things that one could ever have is to have someone around them who's trying to earn their stripes. And it be told to that person, well, you know what would really please our leader, or what should happen is somebody need to kill that motherfucker. There's some people who are around there who would probably do it. Probably go ahead and take a gun and shoot me or you. Under the guise of they're doing it for the good of the movement and what have you, to advance Black folk. So that's in many ways what you're dealing with. And when you're talking about the killing of, a brother with cyanide, come on, that's an issue. But one thing that I give white radicals that I can't give black folk. White folk take action. They don't suffer in silence. They take action.
True.
And it's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So you get, look at John Brown, look at Thomas Jefferson, look at all of these white quote unquote leaders, and they're going to take action. Whereas black folk are going to talk to each other about it and never really do much.
Exactly. I definitely agree with that one. Now, do you know why, with the groups supposedly so strong for black people, why was a black man the first for them to kill? I think it would have probably been better killing somebody else, but the first black superintendent?
No, because this isn't a racial thing. This is about fighting totalitarianism and fascism. It's not a racial thing, not at all. And they will tell you that get over race, because a black snake will bite you the same as a white snake.
Wow. Okay, let's take a little quick view of this brother that they assassinated. And we'll come back and talk a little bit more about that.
On today's show, Oakland Superintendent Dr. Marcus Foster in his address to district faculty and staff from 1973.
You see, what you believe about yourself transfers to children in terms of your attitude. They absorb it. They catch it. The nonverbal communication, they pick it up. So I want all of you to be aware of your personal potency. You're powerful people. You're teachers. You're powerful in the lives of children, at least potentially you are. But you exercise that power or not, up to you.
Including so much we could still stand to learn 50 years later.
You see, that's where we are going to win. We'll have differences. As long as we don't let those differences separate us and pull us apart and tear us apart in a kind of disruptive confrontation, if we can believe in each other and stand on the common ground, that children are what we are all about, and it will do nothing to rob children of an opportunity to learn. That whatever our adult differences are, we'll work them out as professionals and adults working together. But we will not cause children to suffer while we solve our problems.
Plus, a special conversation with Foster's biographer, Dr. John P. Spencer.
He inspired people. He was somebody who was capable of really motivating and inspiring, making people feel that there was hope.
All right, so that was a little clip about Dr. Foster. Doc, how did the world, or Black America, reflect when they killed Brother Foster? And what did that really say about the organization?
Well, I can't speak to how people reacted to Black America reacted to him being killed. But what I will say is quite simply this, that Black folk have a saying that they utilize, and it is just plain crazy. That these people are just crazy. you know, but I understand why they killed him. And what I'll say about why they killed him is quite simply that they worked themselves up into a lather. And you can say, well, yeah, he's inspiring and blah, blah. But look at what he's teaching them. Look at the content. He's teaching them to work within the system. He's teaching them this, and that. So you have that level of disbelief that is occurring, that what other people are thinking is a positive thing. Him, you know, encouraging people in this. Look what he's encouraging them to do. And now on top of him encouraging them to do, he's really in many ways a wolf in sheep's clothing. Because you're going to get them these IDs, and before long, they're going to have the mark of the beast on them. You know, the spiraling nature of conspiracy theorists knows no end.
Wow. So just to go over their goals, it says Symbionese Liberation Army was a radical left-wing group whose stated goals included the overthrow of the U.S. capitalist state and the liberation of all oppressed people through violent revolution. In their manifesto, the SLA outlined a vision for a Symbionese federated republic, a utopian federation of sovereign nations based on unity and equality. Just that part right there, Doc, don't seem that I don't see a way that they could have achieved that.
Ain't well thought out.
Hell no.
But see that's coming from you know, your prior experience of dealing with similar things. You know, you sit there and you pontificate. You know, half of y'all are high. You know, just what we need to do. It's very similar to what we see coming out of the Trump administration. You know, they're just sitting around talking shit. It's just that you know, throwing ideas left and right. It's just the idea that they have the ability to put somebody in a high position. That's the only difference. So yeah, you know, and the thing is that you read people the wrong way, and you act as if you know how they're going to react. The SLA's killing of people, that's not going to endear you to Black folk who are in the 1970s steeped in the Black church.
Right.
We're still going to church then. And you think they're going out here killing a pillar of the community is going to endear us to you? No. And so you can have these manifestos, you can have all of this pontification, what I call mental masturbation sessions, okay? But you ain't got the ability or the skill, the know-how to implement a single thing. You just simply don't. How are you going to get all these different radical groups together on the same page? Let's say that the entire right disappears, all capitalists leave. What does tomorrow look like? And that's where nobody wants to deal with that, because nobody has an answer for that. Because you have to really get down to the brass tacks of it. What do we do? And you really can't even answer that because you ain't never experienced that tomorrow of what it would look like if they were gone. You're going to have to literally be trying to build it as you fly. And trust me when I say that everybody's not going to agree that you need to be the pilot. So now you're going to have a bunch of people who are backbiting. Well, how come he get to make the decision? Come on. Well, you have opened Pandora's box versus just going ahead and saying, listen, we're going to work within the system and we're going to try to improve our plight as a people within the existing system.
Definitely. So their goals continue to say the SLA sought to unify people of all races, genders, and ages into a revolutionary fighting force. Fighting system oppression, rooted in Black nationalist Marxist ideology, the SLA positioned itself against what it called the 7 evils of American society: racism, sexism, ageism, capitalism, fascism, individualism, and competitiveness. What is wrong with competitiveness and what is wrong with individualism? What did they see wrong with those?
Competitiveness is going to result in people losing. They want everyone to win. They want everyone to be equal. Okay. And what was the last one that you named?
Individualism.
Individualism. I mean, come on now. Here you have a situation where, you know, when you get paid, why do you think you should be able to keep all your money? Ain't that selfish?
Shit.
That's where the rubber meets the road. You know, in theory, yeah. We ought to put our money together. We ought to, you know, make sure that everybody get to eat it. Yeah, we have that sort of idea, that leaning. We don't want to see anybody, especially nobody that's Black, out here just doing bad. Yet at the same time, you know, to look at our brother Umar right now. You know, how many people are telling Umar, you know, look, bro, you need a job. That's you know, it's over, brother. You're gonna need to go out somewhere and you're gonna need to get a job. So the best, and this is sort of what I was talking about when I said working within the existing system. One of my professors at The Ohio State University, Dr. Stephanie J. Shaw, she used this term in her book, What a Woman Ought to Be and Ought to Do. The term is socially responsible individualism, which is going to allow you to go out and amass whatever monies that your ability, that you have the skills to amass, yet at the exact same time, don't forget that you should be charitable, that you should be socially responsible. So socially responsible individualism. When they ask you at McDonald's if you want to round your order up, you know, to give to the poor little kids at the Ronald McDonald House, yeah, you should probably do that. But what they're talking about is everybody pooling their money together in a way, and, you know, the old Communist Party USA mantra, which is from each according to his own abilities, to each according to his own needs. Theoretically, that's beautiful. However, when you got a couple that ain't working, should they be able to pull out the pot? And you and yours get less? So it's a lot of it is the idea of what are you willing to do, and what's achievable, and what they're talking about is not achievable. It's not accomplishable, because the only reality that most Americans know is capitalism.
Right.
And how do you get them away from that?
So Doc, is there, because Norma X talks about socialism, that socialism can work if we have our own country. It's the best system there is, in my opinion. Now, is there a country that actually practices socialism on this earth? And well, that's the first part, and then I'll give you another question on that.
Well, you know, you have an argument that America is a socialist country. Okay. Yeah, you can make that argument that America is even a socialist country. The fact that that Americans get a tax return is an element of socialism. The fact that you have social services, that's an element of socialism. The fact that American corporations and what have you, we call it corporate welfare. are basically, they receive subsidies from the United States government in regards to marketing their product, producing their product, moving their product around the world so that they can sell it. Those are all elements of socialism. You don't have a purely capitalist nation, and you don't have a purely communist or socialist nation. It's almost impossible to accomplish. But for those who are advocating for the idea of socialism in a Black nation, you're asking for, you would have to get people that have never experienced capitalism and are unusual enough that they are not endowed with what I argue is one of the gravest mistakes that God made when he made humans. And that mistake is quite simply that enough is never enough. And I think that 98% of people in Black America will feel that way. So you're going to try to tell me that if you have a businessman who, whatever he produces, let's say it's very, very successful and what have you, at the end of the day, he's paid his workers, his production costs are covered and what have you. Let's say he has $10 million extra in profit. What happens to that money? Where does it go?
In his pocket, I would guess.
See, that's the problem. Because it's not, you need to have a person of the mindset that says, well, I need to go ahead and either pay my workers more or give this money away to charity so that we can lessen homelessness and hunger within our people. You know, what do you need? And if you need housing, if you need food, you need clothes for your children, then that $10 million should be utilized for that. That's a very difficult thing to sell to humans, because humans are going to say, why didn't you get up off your ass and go work like I went and worked?
Mm-hmm. You know, so Doc, would you say that Jesus' government would be a socialist government?
Theoretically, yeah. Theoretically. But you have to also remember, you know, the Messiah saying, you know, pay to Caesar what is Caesar's. But theoretically, when you're talking about working, and in many ways, and let's just call it what it is damn near taking a vow of poverty. That you're never going to be quote unquote rich. You're never going to be quote unquote wealthy. But everybody is going to theoretically be taken care of. And that ties into the idea of, so what is the impetus for a person to go out and really work hard? What is the impetus behind ingenuity, a new creation of something, if you're not going to receive any of the money from it? It's kind of like the medical field. When you look at COVID, when COVID happened and people were freaking out, I was like, yo, there's some money involved in this. People are going to in every way come up with a vaccine to solve this, because there's money there. If there's some money involved, people are going to focus upon it. And that's just what it comes down to.
So Norma says Russia solved that. There's socialism-based competitiveness. Based on regions that produce/create new inventions get more money, but it doesn't make less productive regions super poor.
I mean, I understand exactly what it is that Norma X is saying, But when you're talking about the generation of a Black nation, especially with Black folk who have been basted in the idea of hyper consumerism, capitalism, that's going to be a difficult sell because their beak has already been wet. And they value, let's be honest, Americans by and large value luxury material items, regardless of what their socioeconomic status is.
So, Doc, you would be saying that in the socialist environment, there will be no big screen TV. There will be no everybody not driving no Lexus. Everybody not in no Escalade. You know.
You might be able to get yourself a big screen TV. You might, you might be able to. I'm not saying that everybody is going to get a standard starter kit for their home, but the idea of becoming super rich or wealthy, no, you're not going to be able to do that. Especially when you're talking about but let me back off of that and be fair, because if you go back to FDR's 1932, he starts in 1932. FDR, he's built the New Deal based upon the idea of heavy taxation, and the upper echelon, the top of American owners. We're talking about the industrial giants. Their tax rate was 93%. And he had to do that to, in many ways, keep the nation afloat. And the irony in this in many ways shows you the phenomenal amount of money that the wealthy are making. Paying 93% in taxes, they still made millions every year. I mean, really think about that. They still were making millions. So it's even possible, the idea of socially responsible individualism is possible even in this nation. However, you can't even get the poorest of us to agree to that because they don't understand the idea of socially responsible individualism.
And I was going to ask you about that as well, because that's what I was just thinking about. And the same thing where FDR took the gold, made gold illegal for Americans to own, and they had to give it up. And then once FDR took everybody's gold, then he raised the damn price of gold. And these are things that I would have never first expected to hear American presidents say. It's illegal to give up your gold, give it up. And then the American people who had the gold actually did what he said and gave up, their gold.
What choice you got?
Shit, leave the country and take your wealth to a different country.
Soon as you move one bar of gold, brother, that plane or that ship wasn't going nowhere. And they would have seized it. They would have took it. They would have housed it. And you would have got nothing for it. It's very similar to the idea of eminent domain. When they decide that this is for the greater good and they decided it's for the greater good, you kind of screwed.
Wow. So also in their ideology of their plan, they wanted the ending of prison systems. The group sought to destroy the U.S. prison system, which it considered an oppressive institution, and advocating for the release and reintegration of prisoners through revolutionary comradeship. Who
do you think suggested that?
The brother that escaped jail?
There you go. There you go. The Panthers had a similar rule, similar call in the 10-point platform and program where they said they want an immediate release to all Black men who have been, incarcerated because they haven't been tried by a jury of their peers. But if you were to read the document, the Constitution, it doesn't promise you a jury of your peers. It talks about a cross section of the community. Okay, a jury of your peers, if you were a bank robber, would be bank robbers.
So wait a minute, Doc. I know that I could have sworn I read that somewhere that you get a jury of your peers, but you're saying that it's not in. That's
cross section. It's a cross section of the community, which people have translated into a jury of your peers. As they translated it and analyzed it and things like that. Now they simply say a jury of your peers. It's a cross section of the community. That's what you're legally allowed to have. A cross section.
So what does a cross section mean?
That's kind of up for debate, to be honest with you. And so much of it is predicated upon where the trial is going to be held at. Think about the difference between the OJ jury and then a jury that happened in Simi Valley with Wentz, Kuhn, and Rosenio and Powell.
Mm-hmm.
You get a whole different thing from that cross section of the community.
Wow. Do you think that in this time period that we're in now, and I don't know if you remember Brother C, but he used to be a strong advocate for letting all of the prisoners out of the jail, letting everybody free. Me and him would go back and forth over that because I didn't agree with that. I still don't agree. Let everybody out of jail. What you mean? No, we ain't doing that, baby. That ain't happening. But this idea of releasing the prisoners, and because the prisoners are free, they are going to act like model citizens in the community. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, look at what we have. Now, one of my guilty addictions now is I watch these YouTube videos of people wilding out on the police. Okay, tell the police what they ain't gonna do. Get your hands off of me. What's wrong with you? I need a white shirt. I want a white shirt here. Call my mama. All that type of foolishness is going on, and that's with jails and prisons. If you got rid of that, man, please. Oh my God. I'm not an advocate for opening up the cells. There are some people who need to be locked away from. And matter of fact, there's a lot more people who are out here amongst us who need to be locked up away from civilized people, and they ain't all Black.
Definitely. Norma says that, in all honesty, the only solution to law in countries like the divided states is that every race must police each other. There shouldn't be white cops in Black neighborhoods. Do you think that would make a difference if that could actually happen? White cops in white neighborhoods, Black cops in Black neighborhoods. Would it make a difference?
My thing is that I don't necessarily look at it as purely a racial thing, although I understand what Norma X is saying. Malcolm talked about something very similar in the autobiography of Malcolm X. What I do believe, and I think that it's idealistic what Norma X is talking about, but what I do believe is actually achievable is a rule that says quite simply, if you are a officer or you are a teacher, what have you, a public servant, you have to live in the neighborhood that you work in. That way you will hopefully know those people and get to know those people and be amongst those people and have a vested interest in that community moving forward, have a vested interest in the children at the school learning if you're a teacher. The problem that you end up with is when you have these mercenaries who are coming in and they are wreaking havoc within Black communities because, number one, they're scared. Number two, they don't know these people, which adds to their being fearful and frightful.
Definitely. So another thing on their agenda, they wanted to returning the land to the people. The SLA sought to take control of all state and capitalist-owned land and return it to the people. They proposed creating laws to prevent individual ownership of land, air, or water. They also wanted to destroy the rent system. As part of its anti-capitalist platform, the SLA aimed to take control of buildings from capitalist class and completely destroy the rent system. When I read that, that made me think of the politician. You remember in New York City, the rent is too goddamn high.
Yeah, I mean, you know, these are all great ideas. That, you know, but they're not going to happen. Not in this nation, and they're not going to happen. You know, it's just what it is, and so you should arrive at a point where it dawns on you, man, this is just silly. What we do, all this time that we spending on this is just really silly. That we gonna sit around and we gonna talk about something that if we wasn't high or drunk, we would know, man, that ain't gonna never happen. You mean tell me that you're gonna be able to get an apartment for free? It's never gonna happen. You're gonna be able to go over there to the hometown buffet and eat for free because it's not gonna happen. I get that. You know, I get that people are, you know, you just want to sit around and talk instead of having some concrete plans. How you gonna achieve this? What economic system you gonna be dealing with? Who's gonna run this? Who determine where you gonna work at? Or you gonna just get the fruits of everybody else's labor?
Exactly.
That's a problem right there. You know, what do you do with all of that?
And then their last thing is forcing concessions through violence. The SLA believed that armed resistance was necessary to achieve their goals. They used tactics like bank robberies and kidnappings to gain funds and force public concessions, such as when they made the Hearst family give millions of dollars worth of food to the poor in the Bay Area. So,
I mean, once again, the theory is great, what have you, but you know, I get what they're saying and what they're feeling, but at the same time, I'm still like, and what? Because you haven't undone the system. Okay, the Hearst family is still wealthy. Okay, you haven't really hurt them. Now what? What's the next step that you want to do to achieve your quote unquote revolution? You know that you're not doing anything that's long term and sustainable. You're just not.
Wow. Let's look at. We're going to move on to Patty Hearst. Let's take a look at this video.
Poor white woman.
Oops.
Yeah, Matt Loudon.
Patty Hearst had dominated headlines for years, often in the very same newspapers that her grandfather built into an empire. NBC's Stephanie Gosk is here with more on that. Steph, good morning.
Good morning, guys. This is one of those stories as amazing today as it was decades ago. For nearly a century, the Hearst family name was synonymous with newspaper magnate, titan, tycoon. But that changed in 1974 when it took on a few new associations: kidnapping, victim, hostage, and armed bank robber. The kidnapping, crimes, and conviction of Patty Hearst are a saga as surreal as their era.
The 1970s were the craziest times of the 20th century. Political violence, economic disaster with gas lines, political crisis with Watergate.
Out of that chaos came the Symbionese Liberation Army, or the SLA, a disorganized but deadly domestic terrorist group of just 8 people who in February 1974 kidnapped 19-year-old Cal Berkeley student Patricia Hearst.
In retrospect, I have trouble figuring out what it was that these people wanted, except to be noticed, and that they certainly accomplished.
She was the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst, newspaper tycoon and inspiration for the 1941 film Citizen Kane. American heiress author Jeffrey Toobin.
As the names Gates or Zuckerberg are today, the name Hearst was to the 1970s.
While Hearst's parents pleaded for her to come home, the SLA released a series of audio recordings confirming her kidnapping.
I'm making this tape to let you know that I'm still okay.
Just 2 months after her kidnapping, the SLA robbed a San Francisco bank. And there was Patricia Hearst, automatic rifle in hand, looking more like a gunman than a victim.
The impact of the photographs of Patty Hearst with the machine gun were in some ways even bigger than the kidnapping itself, because it established, or so it appeared, that Patty Hearst had gone over to the other side.
It was a story the press and the public could not resist, even if there was more to that photo than people realized.
The head of the Symbionese Liberation Army told her, "We're going to rob her bank. You're going to be up front. There'll be a number of guns behind you. One false step on your part, and we'll gun you down."
After the Hibernia robbery, the SLA and their apparent newest member became America's most wanted fugitives, finally turning up a month later in Los Angeles. As 2 of her kidnappers get stopped by security at a sporting goods store, Hearst, left alone with car keys and an assault rifle, shot up the building to come to their aid.
That was really the moment where she really established that she was really a member of the SLA and no longer a victim.
The fallout was immediate. The next day, her other 6 captors were tracked down to a house in South Central LA and killed in a shootout with LAPD. More than a year on the run followed, including another bank robbery in which a mother of 4, Myrna Opsal, was killed while helping her church deposit donations. Hearst drove the getaway car. She was arrested in September 1975, 19 months after her kidnapping. Magazines like Time were billing the case as the trial of the century. The Hearsts brought in America's biggest defense attorney, F. Lee Bailey.
Take me back to that moment when you first met Patty Hearst.
I was talking to a zombie.
A case of potential brainwashing that 4 decades later still stands out as wholly unique.
In all of our history, there is no case like Patty Hearst. She was a wealthy, secure woman who turned up after 60 days after being kidnapped as an alleged warrior. And the trial was about, how did that happen?
Ultimately, the jury convicted Hearst for her role in the Hibernia robbery, sentencing her to 7 years in prison.
In some respects, it was a verdict on the young people of the 1970s. It was a verdict that said, you know, we gave you every advantage and you turned on us and you became one of the bad guys.
While her surviving kidnappers later served jail time for the death of Myrna Opsal, her sentence was first commuted by President Carter, and she was later pardoned by President Clinton.
She wound up living the life for which she was destined. Patty Hearst is a rich lady in the suburbs. She trains show dogs. She has grandchildren. She has a nice, quiet, suburban life. That's all her parents wanted for her. And finally, that's what she got.
Hearst is the only person in U.S. history to have her sentence commuted by one president and then be pardoned by a second. Only one member of the SLA remains in prison. He's serving a life sentence in San Quentin for murdering an Oakland school superintendent prior to Hearst's kidnapping.
It's fascinating. As you said, the fascination of it, it holds up after all these
There's
years.
never been a case like it since.
Good job, Steph. Thank you very much.
Hello, Today fans.
All right. So was she a victim or was she a damn bank robber?
She was a victim. That brother with that Big Johnson and got a hold of that little girl over there, Cal Berkeley. He turned her out. That's what it was. Like, girl, you don't do what we tell you to do. No more of that loving. No more of that loving. He was a victim. Taken in. But you see what the system did. The system like, hey, we gotta let her go. That you want to talk about a waste of whiteness. Woo! Being an heiress to close to probably $1 billion, and you blow that? Oh no! What a way! I mean, bruh, brings a tear to my eye when I see them type of white folk get in trouble. That's a waste of whiteness right there.
So did the SLA, did they have any strategic thinking when it comes to kidnapping Patty Hearst? It was just shit, let's just go fucking kidnap her.
Look, you talking about 7-8 people who probably high as can be all the time. Okay, weaving conspiracy theories. You know, it could be something as simple as, you know, I heard that Patty Hearst, she go to school over there at Berkeley. Word? Yeah, we ought to go there and kidnap her. There you go. We're not talking about no mastermind, no. You're talking about people who are flying by the seat of their pants.
Wow, that is something. That is something. So this Stockholm syndrome argument that Patty Hearst made in her case, is that a way? Is that a way to excuse a white woman's quote unquote revolutionary act, or is it a valid psychological phenomenon? What's your thoughts?
Once again, I believe they put that big mandingo Negro on Patty Hearst. And she couldn't say no more. Okay. He scrambled her brains. Okay. That's what happened. Is it Stockholm syndrome? Is it valid? I can't think of a scenario where that would be valid. I believe that we all make choices to our benefit. Patty Hearst was trying to survive, you know, and keep seeing Q in her bed. There you go. There you go. So in that way, you can say it's a psychological issue. Okay, but what I'll ask you is this: you ever heard somebody black get off by using that defense?
Nope.
You know why were you shooting out the car during the drive-by? Oh, because they had then took me over there and they forced me to do stuff. Yeah, see how far that gets you. You can't even go into a court with multiple personality disorder if you black, please.
Exactly.
They're gonna get to the bottom of it. They're gonna figure out which one did it.
So there, we're going to go to a eulogy that she did for her fallen SLA members. Let's go check this out. Oops.
Based on the information contained with our interviews with witnesses and the investigations made, she was acting on her own free will, in our opinion.
Up in Hillsborough, California, hearing their daughter described no longer as a witness, but as a criminal now, the Hearsts had this to say.
I just hope everybody will remember Patty is still a kidnapped victim. She was taken away against her will. And psychologically, she's a victim of thought control by terrorists. I hope she'll give herself up and come home.
She is believed still in or around Los Angeles. Police, for the last couple of days, have been moving from stakeout to stakeout, following one lead, then another, trying to find her and the few other SLA members who remain.
I want to talk about the way I knew our 6 murdered comrades, because the fascist pig media has, of course, been painting a typically distorted picture of these beautiful sisters and brothers. Sim Q loved the people with tenderness and respect. He helped me see that it's not how long we live that's important, it's how we live. Jelena was beautiful. She exploded with the desire to kill the pig. She taught me how to fight the enemy within through her constant struggle with bourgeois conditioning. Gabi practiced until her shotgun was an extension of her right and left arms. She taught me the patience and discipline necessary for survival and victory. Zoya, female gorilla, perfect love and perfect hate reflected in stone-cold eyes. Faiza was a beautiful sister who taught me to shoot first and make sure the pig is dead before splitting, and I'll always love her. Cujo was the gentlest, most beautiful man I've ever known. Neither Cujo or I had ever loved an individual the way we loved each other. Our relationship's foundation was our commitment to the struggle and our love for the people. It's because of this that I still feel strong and determined to fight. Our comrades didn't die in vain. The pig lies about the advisability of surrender have only made me more determined. I renounced my class privilege when Sin and Cujo gave me the name Tanya. While I have no death wish, I have never been afraid of death. For this reason, the brainwashed duress theory of the pig Hearst has always amused me. Life is very precious to me, but I have no delusions that going to prison will keep me alive. And I would never choose to live the rest of my life surrounded by pigs like the Hearsts. Death to the fascist insect that preys upon the life of the people.
Wow. Wow. She sounds pretty sincere to me. Wow.
You know.
And her family still believed that everything she was doing was because she was kidnapped.
I mean, come on. How could they not believe that? You know? The scariest thing in the world to me, if I was the Hearst, would be Patty's crazy ass being allowed to come back home. But she ain't gonna stop. Let her wake up in that plush bed in a bedroom that's bigger than the SLA's whole house. Okay, and she'll say, "This ain't right. I need to kill everybody. Strike one for the revolution." Call F. Lee Bailey back up. Tell him we're gonna need you to run that back. I got Stockholm syndrome. I can't help myself.
Wow. Do you think that there could be any real unity in fighting the American system with the organization that's set up like the SLA?
No, they ain't gonna be able to work with nobody else. You know what I'm saying? No, that's not gonna happen. They're gonna end up. There's gonna be some disagreement, some conflict. If it don't happen within SLA, it's definitely gonna happen with a group that they're dealing with, and there's gonna be bloodshed right there. The Panthers, you got this great moment where Bobby Seale is talking about the white boys in the Students for a Democratic Society. And he says, if they keep talking, we're going to go ahead and have some Panthers go over there and issue some corrective measures, meaning whoop their ass. Revolutionary organizations, they agree that change needs to happen, but they can't agree amongst themselves on what that change looks like or how you achieve it. You know, they've never gotten that far. They've always been stuck at square one, which is quite simply this system right here needs to be changed. That's all they know, and that's all that they're capable of really articulating. And when you're talking about, you know, I mean, who would sing Q? Who would he submit to? What organization? What other leader would he? With all them white girls, he got you know, that's a bad Negro right there. he full of self-esteem. Be able to tell him, no, Sink, you go sit down. What? Ain't you seen my white women? You know, you know, no, this ain't gonna work.
Now, I lost the question I was about to ask you.
Oh,
I got it. It ain't going nowhere. So when we were talking before we came live, we were talking about these type of white folks, and you were going into the Weatherman Underground and how they were willing and ready to deal. Now, these are the same group that broke into the FBI and office and found the COINTEL papers and released it out. Now, can you break down the difference between this set of white folks and the SLA white folks and the Panther white folks? Because I'm looking at them as different category of white folks.
Students for a Democratic Society and the Weathermen, these are by and large collegians who have grown, you know, dissatisfied. They have some angst with the existing system. That's who they are. They're known as hippies, free love movement. These are truly the radical white boys, and so much of the protest culture. And it's not ironic that Patty Hearst is at Berkeley. It's not ironic that this is happening in the Bay Area, because that's the epicenter for radicalism and what have you. So you would have, think about it this way: San Francisco 49ers and the Oakland Raiders. The 49ers would be the more prim and proper, you know, organization. That's these white collegians, okay? The Raiders would be the Panthers and these sort of Black Power type of organizations and what have you. Now, in saying that, they're working, they understand how the system works, and they're by and large working through the system, okay? You're going to see many of these white liberals get in, and these white radicals get in trouble when the Democratic National Convention in '68 is in Chicago. They're going to have a problem there, and they're actually going to have to stand trial in regards to that. Comparing them to the Symbionese Liberation Army, these are cats who are in many ways so far out their mind. They own something that nobody else can even really comprehend or understand. And when you heard that eulogy and the things that she was saying, you know, that had a shotgun as a left and the right arm, nobody acts like that that's really interested in living. These are people who are by and large on a suicide mission. It is not accidental that these people ended up dead. Okay, it's just not. You know, if you go back to that, I think it was April 6th, 1968, when Eldridge Cleaver unwisely decided that he was going to lead a group of Panthers to get a revenge killing on an Oakland Police Department officer as a response to the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's in many ways a suicide mission. Little Bobby Hutton dies that night. So what you see with the SLA, they're on a suicide mission, you know, and it's impossible for it to bring revolution. So when you're looking at the Weathermen and SDS, you're looking at white collegians who are still working against the system, but within the system, if that makes sense. They have some rules in regards to what it is that they may do. And SDS is going to actually splinter and have its own radical group, the Weathermen, who were the wildest of the American radical community. And one could argue that the Weathermen would actually be able to get along with the Symbionese, the SLA.
Wow. And as I was saying before we got on, is that, you know, I would rank them right with John Brown, because they definitely, by their actions, fit in that role.
Yeah. Yeah. Suicide mission and all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Do you think that we won't? Do you think that the new group, what are they called? MSNBC and all of them always talk about them, the radical left, this group that, you know, the night before protest, they'll freeze up their, you know, soda bottles and go out there and plant the stuff out there where they're going to be, and then, you know, start hurling into that police. I forget the name of them.
Antifa?
Antifa. There we go. Yes, Antifa. Do you think that Antifa flows in with SLA white members?
They would be the punk version of SLA. Whereas they're throwing water bottles and out there fighting, you know, like, remember the Virginia thing where the dude used the Dodge Charger to kill the person?
Right.
Okay. They would, you know, and you have Antifa going fighting against the white supremacists. SLA would have just shot them. And then they're not going to go sit back and go back and forth with you. They're going to just go ahead and shoot you and kill you. So that would be the difference. And as they proved, they ain't got no problem with, you know, with getting down with guns. None whatsoever.
Definitely. Well, you know, I definitely give the respect to them for doing what they do or what they did. Even though I don't tell Black people to join up with nobody like that. No, that's
It's a heck of a decision.
It is.
Because in many ways you are literally signing your death certificate. They are going to kill you. Period.
Now, as a revolutionary or somebody who just tries to be a freedom fighter for our people, we're not saying that you should run away from instances where, you know, you may lose your life. It comes with it when you stand up against oppressive system like America. Malcolm lost his life. Martin lost his life. I think that comes natural, but I think that what they did Of course, I don't believe they should have done, whether it's kidnapping Patty Hearst or assassinating Dr. Foster. I don't believe that, those things worked out to any good. I would say, now if they went around assassinating police who were beating and killing Black people, then that may be something different. But to do what they did, nah, you're not going to get an approval from that, because I don't see that as revolutionary. Why do you know, Doc, why they saw that as we're doing a revolutionary act, that makes it revolutionary? I don't see
they're operating out of the the idea, quite simply, that anything you do against the system is revolutionary. Anything that you do, regardless of how inconsequential it actually is in the grand scheme of things, is revolutionary. Huey P. Newton said it this way: we must always remember that to move one grain of sand is to change the world. So you have that thinking of, quite simply, that whatever you do, whatever your contribution is, it's something that should be used and should be respected. So that's what they're doing. So anything they do is considered to be revolutionary.
Wow. Interesting. I wanted to take a minute and show this little clip. Play maybe about like 2 or 3 minutes of it, where you have 1968's college students arguing, and then you have the whites and the Blacks, and it's an interesting conversation. I wanted to show a few minutes of it. And this is taking place University of Illinois.
SDS.
And the students saw that one aspect of the whole war was these napalm. Recruiters were coming to campus. I think that the criticism that we infringed upon the liberties of those who wanted to speak to the recruiters is justified. But I think that we have to remember that our country was founded on more than just the guarantee of freedom of speech. It was also founded on the right to life. And if we believe what Senator Kennedy has been saying, there's over 150,000 Vietnamese killed every year, many of them by napalm. So that the students who sat in, it seems to me, set up a hierarchy of values. And they said that the right to life was more important than the right to free speech.
At Berkeley, there is a university policy that employers who discriminate cannot recruit on the campus using university facilities. This is a clear infringement of their right of free speech. And yet the faculty, the administration, the students uniformly support this policy. An equivalent policy might be that employers who burn children, for instance, also can't be allowed to recruit on campus. It seems to me that the free speech issue is exactly the same in the two cases.
What about the moral and the psychological napalm the whites are dropping on blacks? Where has been the student movement across the nation to protest this?
I think the hypocrisy at the University of Illinois is particularly evident, where they've had a speaker ban here for several years, outlawing the subversive and communist speakers, and now they turn around and say that those people who manufacture Dow have a right to the campus because the university is neutral. Well, I think most students are trying to show you that you're not neutral by bringing one set of values and ideas onto the campus and not allowing another.
Napalm, burning and killing little kids in South Vietnam is a hang-up for black people, too. But we got another basic problem here in America. Where is the black or the white revolutions on campuses to stop the moral and the physical napalm that you're dropping on black people?
Look at the South Carolina massacre. Look at the one they had in Texas Southern University last year. Nobody demonstrated against that, but we've had lives to be shed. We had people that died there. But nobody demonstrated against it. But we get hung up in dropping napalm and stuff across the world. This doesn't involve me at all.
You told us, get off the wagon.
What did you say? Give me that part.
I said, when the black student movement finally started discovering the way and the track to work effectively with its own people, called Black Power.
Who told you to sit in on
No,
Dow?
hold it a sec.
Who told you to sit in on
You
Dow?
want to hear me?
And stop that.
You want to hear me answer your question?
Did blacks tell you to do this here?
When you discovered Black Power, brother.
Blacks tell you to stop traffic in the streets?
Hey, you want to hear me or not? When the black movement discovered Black Power, Stokely stood up and he said, all right, white boys, it's back to your own people. We'll take care of our own. Why don't you see if you can learn to do something effective in your own people? We didn't know how to do anything effective in our own people, just as you hadn't known how to do anything effective in your own people. You're on to Black Power now. In the place where we live, the word is student power, because things that most affect us directly in our roles, have to do in and around our roles as students, as young people, with the way the war presses on us, and presses on you too, dig it. When we strike against Dow on campus, it's a strike for you too. That doesn't mean, we expect you to keel over with gratitude, but you got to realize that there are two forces.
White student movement has been going on for the last 10 years. But what you forget to say is that after each group of students go through the university phase, 4 to 6 years in school, they go out into white middle-class society, and they don't continue the movement. They accept the job, a middle-class job with Dow, IBM, or any other firm. And then these are the people that perpetuate the system.
Tell me here, where's the violence at? Where's the violence that whites are willing to give to the war in South Vietnam to get the black man free? I haven't seen it.
On the streets of Oakland, waiting for the cops to club open our heads.
I'm talking about Northeast Champaign. I'm talking about
I don't come
Oakland.
from here.
Are my people free in Oakland?
No, your people aren't free in Oakland.
The real point is my people aren't free in Oakland either.
Yeah, but you got a better set than I got.
You talk about white middle class.
That's exactly why we aren't free.
Johnson, you talk about white middle class America being a jungle. You talk about it from your point of view. Dig it, man.
What is your point of view?
None of us know how to, kids who've grown up in the white movement don't go to work for Dow when they get out of college. They have a lot of trouble figuring out how to move next, because nobody knows how to move in adult white middle class America. That's one of the most important things.
That's not solving our problems, though. Don't tell me about it.
We've got to work on our problems, too.
Well, here, you got one problem here, and that's black people.
No,
black
you got one problem. We got two, black and white.
Howard Spencer, you've been trying to get in for a minute. You want to get in?
No, I just wanted to say it's real good that the issue has been brought in like it is, because you can't really discuss the whole question of Dow without realizing that what is some of the fundamental questions about the society. To question Dow's coming on campus really means that you have to question the war in Vietnam and the impact Dow and napalm is making on that. And then you have to go on to see that the society is founded on the fundamental foundation of racism and exploitation. And black people have been the real victims of that racism. Speaking from black campuses, I don't want to get involved into any question about whether or not a cat has the right to come on campus and recruit black students to come to work for them. They're scared to come in Tougaloo. They sent applications down. They have a very good reason to be scared. For the same reason the directive of the selective service system had to be scared. Black people have been being the laborers for this society and being put in slots for this society for too long. Now, as to how white people and white students deal with that on their own campuses is their problem. And my problem is getting black people to understand that our struggle is related to the whole struggle of really tearing down, destroying the system and building it up. Now, if whites want to do that, good, but they can't tell me how to work on black campuses, and I'm really, frankly, not interested in telling them how to do that if they really want to move to destroy it with integrity. But if they just want to intellectualize about it, I don't want to even get involved in that.
A call was put up, work in your own community.
All right, so I'm going to stop it right there. So, Doc, break that down for us. We had different black groups, different white groups, and seemed to me that they could not get along. You on mute, Doc. We can't hear you.
Hello?
Okay, I can hear you now.
You hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
You're talking about what can best be termed the split. And the split happened during the continuation of James Meredith's March Against Fear. Meredith, the first Negro to go to Ole Miss, felt that black folk in the state of Mississippi were still afraid of white folks. So he was going to march across the state from Memphis all the way to Jackson. Meredith gets shot on the first day. And sort of make a long story short, a who's who of the civil rights movement descends upon Memphis. They continue to march because the fear is quite simply that if we don't, white folk will get the message that all they have to do is become ultra violent towards Black activists and they will stop. But during that march, they make it to Greenwood, Mississippi, the birthplace of Foolish Floyd, ironically. But it's in Greenwood that Willie Mukasa Ricks is going to debut the slogan of Black Power. So white folk, because civil rights movement, it was king-led, it was interracial at that moment. So when white folk see that it's taking a turn towards Black Power, they go do what is predictable that they would do and what they probably should have done. And it is to begin concentrating upon what are the issues facing their community. And for white boys, the number one issue is Vietnam. The average age of a soldier killed in Vietnam is 19. So they're getting killed at, the average age. So imagine how many 17, 18-year-olds have to be killed if a 30-year-old was killed in Vietnam to get that number back down to 19. So what you're seeing in that discussion is quite simply white folks saying, y'all told us to leave. Told us to leave y'all movement and let y'all handle, and he's absolutely correct. You remember the great Malcolm quote that before there can be any Black-white unity, we first need some Black unity. So Black folk are trying to uplift themselves independent and without any help or influence from white folk. That part is correct. And at the exact same time, we told white folk to leave, yet we're seeing people say, well, how come y'all don't bleed for Black folk? Why don't y'all support the Black movement? And they're quite simply saying, listen, y'all told us to leave. And so we left. And in many ways, you're on your own.
And do you think that telling them to leave was the right thing to do?
Yes. Yes, because the civil rights movement had largely failed. When you have LBJ signing the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, no significant immediate tangible gains came from that, especially to impact non-Southern areas. It was time for Black folk to try something different. And they tried something different, and by and large, they failed at it.
Wow. All right, so we're going to move to the last part of the video that we're going to show. Let's take a look at it.
She refused to acknowledge that that little girl was her own, and she refused to acknowledge that there were any strangers or anything unusual going on inside. But several hours later, of course, that house had burned to the ground, and with perhaps 5 SLA members dead inside after the most dramatic gun battle in Los Angeles history, they're saying tonight. But first, police attention was focused on an abandoned apartment building half a block away with the 2 vans, a red VW bus, and a blue Chevrolet van that the SLA had been seen in yesterday. Just before the LAPD SWAT squad searched the building, I walked up to the apartment they were watching and knocked. The door was unlocked. I had it just cracked and heard some movement inside, but then the massive gunfire exploded a half a block away from that house. When that gun battle erupted, we moved down the street. There were sharpshooters and FBI. They raced to positions just around the corner from the house, about 100 feet away. The air shook with gunfire, and police realized what they were up against.
Woman, come here, lady, get out of there! Okay, 40 David, let's listen up, because we're going to need your assistance. Now, we need all the gas that you can round up from Parker Center or any geographical division, and we need it down here, Coast 3, as fast as you can get it down. In addition to that, we need all the ammo that we've got in the safe. We're taking automatic fire front and back from this location. They're much better armed than we are.
Police, right along with reporters and with stunned bystanders, tried to figure out exactly where the crossfire was. People I saw crouched behind cars and fences and telephones, not knowing if they were out of the line of fire or not. Gunfire was so massive, it was absolutely impossible to tell if you were safe or not. Then police went to tear gas bombs. They made a direct hit into the window of the house with one lob, but somebody inside got it right away and pitched it back outside immediately. And then suddenly, the black woman inside stumbled out of the house and she slumped on a porch briefly. Tear gas choked the air. It made it impossible to breathe or even to see for a while. But then police moved in. I saw them walk up. They grabbed the woman, handcuffed her, dragged her 40 feet to a squad car. Police at the time had no idea whether she was an SLA captive or an SLA member. Just before reporters were routed out, I got up close and I saw that she was swollen from the tear gas and unrecognizable and bleeding heavily from the nose. And I heard her say that she had been held unwillingly inside by the SLA, and she was thrown to the ground and questioned by police.
Is it a man, woman? Are they white? Are they white people? Let him talk. Are they white people? Back over there. Are they white people?
And then suddenly the SLA house belched smoke and then flames spewed out into the street. It looked like an explosion of fire. The woman looked up into the back seat of the squad car where she was under intensive questioning to see it, perhaps. There was a tremendous amount of apparent gunfire at this time, and it's possible at this point that the flames themselves were setting off the tremendous amounts of ammunition that the SLA had stockpiled inside the house. And in a way, it was a bizarre thing to see. A fire of this intensity with people inside the burning house with no one attempting to fight it. Whether everyone stood around speculating whether the SLA at this point might possibly consider surrendering when there seemed no hope at all of their winning a gun battle with police that numbered more than 350 at this point. A few moments later, in a house immediately next to this, we will perhaps and perhaps not see film of 6 children, I think all of them were under 7 years old, being rescued from that house. They all came stumbling out onto the sidewalk with a woman who apparently was their mother. No one knew what their connection might possibly have been with that house, and everyone had thought perhaps those houses had been evacuated. They hadn't been, although even now we haven't heard any reports of any injuries, either from gunfire or from the flames in that neighborhood. And there's still a lot of questions being asked right now, and there aren't too many answers to go along with them. I asked Pete Hagan, spokesman for the Los Angeles Police Department, whether he'd ever seen anything like this in his life. I hadn't, no other reporters had. And I said, perhaps Watts? And he said, no, this is the worst thing that he'd ever seen.
Well, Christine, I have a question. The woman that described herself as a hostage that came out of the house,
right.
was that the woman that answered the door?
That's what I've been thinking about. No, frankly, her skin was a darker black. I told you she was swollen, almost unrecognizably from the tear gas, which had been lobbed in there time and time again. The air was filled with tear gas. It's possible it was the same woman, but I really don't think so.
Well, it all began about 10 minutes until 6 o'clock, about 5:50. That's when the actual firing began. What time were you there earlier?
We got there at 4 o'clock, so there was about an hour there to speculate what was going to happen. The streets were filled with people, sharpshooters. I'd never seen anything like it.
Good to have you back safe, Christine.
Glad to be back.
Coming up next, Chuck Henry with a report on the fire that destroyed the house, and Henry Alfaro retraces several incidents of violence that seem to fit together and lead up to tonight's tragedy.
As we said before, the Los Angeles police used a record amount of ammunition in that shootout today. Chuck Henry was there, and he has a report tonight on the large amount of firepower, along with some significant details about the house fire itself. Chuck?
Yes, John, we have that. Little did I know that within 20 minutes after the 5 o'clock newscast, I'd find myself right in the middle of that gunfire, sparked by an almost constant volley of tear gas canisters from the police officers. That small yellow wood-framed home on 54th Street was quickly engulfed in flames, as you can see here. As my camera crew and I moved in for a closer angle, policemen on bullhorns could be heard calling for the suspects to give themselves up, but apparently it was too late. With the thick smell of tear gas choking our lungs, the special weapons team evacuated the adjoining homes, 2 of which caught fire and were gutted by this fire. As all of this was going on, ammunition was exploding in the burning home, with bullets ricocheting across the street and indeed across the block. Then, after perhaps 20 minutes, it seemed like much longer, the first of several fire units arrived onto the scene to the surprise of police officers. To say that the police officers were angered would be an understatement. You could hear them yelling there for the firemen to get out of the line of fire, but apparently the firemen never gave it a second thought, and with bullets flying all over the place, they went about their business. First watering down the main blaze and then trying to save 2 adjoining homes. All of this as officers armed with M16 stood by. Finally, exploding shells proved too much, and the firemen were forced to back off. When the fire was finally out, investigators then moved in. And this film, shot by cameraman Bill Whitman, as you can see, shows one officer picking up what looked like at first to be 2 grenades. And then we saw that he had what then appeared to be what remained of perhaps a rifle or a machine gun. Whatever it was a weapon used by those inside the home. Now, an interesting thing happened to me while covering that story, and I hate to think of the consequences, really. As I was huddled behind that fire truck, I was holding a film magazine, which we use, just like this one, and soundman Gordon Willingham was behind me, and we could hear the bullets ricocheting, and I heard what sounded like a loud plink. It's almost that at first I thought it was a rock, apparently hit, and Gordon said, "Look out," and I looked on my sleeve, and this is what I found. This is a shell, as you can see. It had ricocheted, a bullet had ricocheted off the film magazine and landed on my arm.
Did you say you felt your arm as well, and then later you detected that it was aching?
No, the arm didn't ache. The bullet was hot, but it landed on the sleeve of the coat here, and I quickly, hit it and knocked it on the ground.
All right, so that's the end of the SLA. The majority of them went out in a flame of smoke, and then the rest of them went to jail. So, Doc, how do we sum up the short time of the Symbionese Liberation Army?
I mean, it's yet again another example of what happens when you're full of vigor and emotion and lacking in political theory or thought. There's no realistic, achievable goal when you're talking about an organization of 8 people. They are presenting themselves as anarchists who are just going to seek to disrupt the entire system and let the chips fall where they may. They were on a suicide mission, and they, amazingly were able to achieve, that goal of death.
Definitely. And for people who consider themselves to be revolutionaries, how would you tell them that they should navigate whatever their mission objectives are?
I think that you need to kind of reverse engineer it and say, this is the ultimate goal. And off of that ultimate goal, begin to think about what's realistic. The idea of picking up arms and going head up with the United States government is never going to prove to be a beneficial tactic. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to work for you. Not very well. So begin to refine what your goals are and what are appropriate strategies and tactics that can be used to achieve that.
Definitely. And your closing comments, Doc?
Just happy to be here, man. Happy to see you. Happy to build with you. And, just had a wonderful time, man, as I always do here.
Definitely. Thanks, Doc. Thanks. We want to welcome and thanks Number X for being here. Peace and blessings. Tranquil, peace and blessings. Want to thank you for being here as well. And Mac 285, peace and blessings. Thank you for joining us. And I didn't even notice, but we were only live on your channel, Doc. So I got to upload this to mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought I hit both of them, but nope, I only hit one. So I have to upload this to my channel. But definitely a great program. This month of August has been a very good learning period about the different groups and what they do and what did they accomplish. You know, I think for me, you know, even though I would have never been a member of SLA, I would have never even gave them the opportunity to talk to me, really. But, you know, I salute you for having the courage to live the life that you say you were about, because y'all lived that life to the fullest. And, you know, all respect and honor to you for what you did for the freedom of our people. No matter whether you were successful or not, you at least took a shot and you gave your lives for that shot. And we definitely appreciate you for the service that you have rendered our people. And y'all names are etched in history, and it shall never, ever die. And with that, I'm going to say, as we always say, you kill the nigga in you, I'm going to kill the nigga in me, and our God will reign supreme. We are Black first, today, tomorrow, and forever. Love you, family. Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.
Peace.
So you better get the message and get it straight. You're going to need some bridge work. It's simple as that. Because we're living in judgment. We're living in implementation.